Hello everyone. So in this video, I thought I'll probably share my development workflow for Drupal based sites. Now, in case you don't know, I have been doing a lot of wonderful things with Drupal for many years, and I use Drupal for most of my big sites, including ravisagar.in. Now, this particular site is in Drupal, and Drupal is, if you don't know, Drupal is a CMS based framework. You can do a lot of wonderful things with Drupal. You can actually build a site like this. You can actually build there are plenty of use cases, but usually when you have a big site with a lot of content and you need like a solid, robust platform, then Drupal is a wonderful CMS. Now, if you are maybe new to Drupal, or maybe if you have never really worked on Drupal, then I thought I'll probably share with you that there is a development workflow that you can create when you want to maybe work on a Drupal based site. If you have a simple site, I think you can just work directly. For example, if you have a simple plain HTML based site, then you don't really need a development. I think there is some kind of a development workflow because you do things locally, and then of course you push your code to your code repository, and depending upon how you want to deploy those changes, maybe if you have because I use GitLab, and on GitLab there is a way to create some pipeline so that any new changes to the code can be published directly on the website. But for Drupal based sites, the process is slightly different. I'm sure there are plenty of things that we can do, but for my personal needs, I use this particular setup where basically I have three environments. Number one, I have a local site which is on my local computer, and I have two sites on production. This is of course a live site, which is of course the live site, but there is also something called as a staging site where I will test the changes, or let us say if I'm upgrading something. Now let me explain the process. So usually my live site has the latest content, because I add things on live site. There are always new things added to the site. So whenever I have to, let us say, perform a change, if I'm, let us say, upgrading a Drupal site. So the process is that I first refresh my local with the production data. So when I do a refresh, I basically do a complete refresh where I take a backup of the files and also the database, and then I bring it to my local, and then I basically make sure that the local copy I have is basically an exact clone of the production. Now then I perform the changes. Let us say if I'm upgrading, I will do it on my local. So if you're using Composer, you can do it very easily. And if you are if you're not really using Composer, then I think try to use Composer because it's a convenient way to do it. Now when you perform on this particular URL, I have listed all the details. But when you're done with the changes, what you can do is, or when you are, let us say, done with the upgrade, for example, you can then make sure that all these changes are or talking about, let us say if you perform an upgrade, usually there is a change in the code, right? Because there are new files that you have downloaded as part of the upgrade process. So from your local computer, from your local site, do a git commit, like push those changes to maybe a dev branch, or let us say whatever branch that you may have, and then go to your staging. Now from local, at this stage when you're doing this upgrade, don't do any addition on production. You can you can actually upgrade, but you can let your production up and running. There's no need to shut it down, but and no new data can be added on production, so that is not really a problem. So but of course don't really add any code changes on production directly. So when you perform the upgrade, commit your changes to your repository, then go to staging, and when you go to staging, then you can actually do a git pull, and then you can run this command called composer install. It will actually it will basically make sure that whatever changes that you have done, maybe you have done some configuration changes, or maybe if you have done some changes to the, let us say, there is a new version of Drupal, for example, which is what we are doing right now, then this will of course make sure that the staging is also upgraded. And when I do this, I use this opportunity to also not only upgrade the files, not only upgrade on only the file system, but also I move the data. I basically use the database as well. So I make sure the latest database changes are also there on staging. And this is of course a very simple way of doing it. I mean, I'm not really a hardcore Drupal developer, but this is something that like for a bare minimum setup for a small site, small to medium size, I think this approach will work. And even for a big site, but this is what I have been doing for a while now. Now, when you use this staging environment to test your upgrade, then of course do it properly. And when you are sure that everything is working fine, then do the same thing on live. Basically, do a git pull, then do a git pull, and then composer install, and then you have to do few other things, and then of course you will have the new files or new upgraded site on Drupal. And don't do any database restore, because while you're doing this, your new or maybe your production site may have received new content. And then that is it. This is of course a very simple process, but this works really well at least for me. And what I do normally whenever I'm working on anything like this, whenever I'm learning something or whenever I have my notes, I try to, and by the way, this particular site is actually published using org mode. And what I do is basically if I make if I make my own notes, and if I think that those notes can be published or shared with everyone, I do that on this particular site. So this is what I have done here. On this particular page, you will find this. It is still work in progress, but it is of course live. I mean, you will find new things added to this. For example, on this particular page, you will find steps to upgrade Drupal, and this is something that I also do on my local for referring, because these are my notes. This is my run book for upgrading Drupal, and I thought I'll probably share it with everyone, because you may want to do something similar. And this process is I think whenever you're working with whenever you're doing software development, whenever applicable, try to have at least 3 environments. One is of course your local dev environment where you actually do things, you develop things. Then there should be a place where you can test those new changes. And then at the same time, you have of course your production, where everything goes whenever you are happy and you have validated your new changes or configurations, whatever you're doing. But do take a look at this particular page if you think you're doing something similar for Drupal, of course. For doing the same thing for a very simple site. For example, this particular site is actually published using, as I mentioned, org mode, which is nothing but whenever I do a publishing of site using org mode, there is a folder where this site is generated, and then I of course use Git to manage it and to basically push those changes, new blogs, for example, to my repository. And from my repository, because I use GitLab, on GitLab you can actually have this auto deployment. So all the new Git commits, like a blog post, are actually deployed here. And if you want to learn how to do it, on this particular site, you will find plenty of information. For example, this particular blogging with Emacs and org mode, you can read it, and you can actually take a look at different things that I do, configurations that I use for publishing. And that is all I wanted to talk about today. I hope you enjoyed watching this video and you learned something new. Thank you very much. Bye bye.